Hey everyone, Alex Talander here, and welcome to our bonus content as we work on putting Ostium Season 6 together. We're continuing with our Behind the Ostium series as we go in depth with the making and discussion of how each episode of Ostium came to be, as well as much more. I am joined by Dwayne Farver, a big fan of the show and creator of the spin off podcast Manifestations. If you enjoyed the Behind the Ostium series, you can get full access to over 50 episodes right now by supporting Team Ostium on Patreon at patreon.com/ostiumpodcast. You'll also get access to a bunch of other bonus content on there too. Once again, that's patreon.com/ostiumpodcast. We'll continue working on getting Ostium Season 6 ready for release in 2022, but for now, sit back and enjoy another episode of Behind the Ostium. Welcome to another Behind the Ostium. And I had this idea that before we kicked into covering Ostium Season 4, I wanted to do a little episode on script formatting and kind of how my script formatting has changed over the seasons of Ostium. And I've got Dwayne with me, of course, here for Behind the Ostium. Say hi, Dwayne.
Hello.
And so to kind of get his viewpoint too, and kind of his input with how he's been working with manifestations and anything that might have changed with him. It all kind of started with actually the podcast creator guy, Evo Terror, who's been working in podcasting for over 20 years. And he has a great podcast called Podcast Pontifications. And if you're any sort of want to be looking to get into podcasting or just want to know podcasting news, it's a fantastic show that he releases an episode Monday through Thursday every day. And they're always under 10 minutes, but it's always something very useful and knowledgeable about podcasting that's just fascinating. So he had a little thing about talking about audio fiction and writing in that and how they're different to audiobooks and writing with books. And then in my last Writing Walks episode, I kind of started talking a bit about this in writing, and it made me want to do a little more into it, hence this Behind the Ostium about script format. So as everyone pretty much knows, I came from a direct writer's background into podcasting, not the screenwriting angle, but the narrative fiction writing angle. And so definitely to start off with, I was doing a lot of, because I have an ongoing narration, a lot of descriptive terms for what was going on, adding details that you might have been able to get across possibly through sound design or interaction with characters and things like that. And it's one of those things that the more I wrote in Ostium, the more characters I also added, the more I kind of cut away from having too much of that kind of unnecessary words for the characters to say in describing things, and just kind of let either the scene sit for itself with sound design or with how the characters were interacting with each other and the reactions they would have that the listener would expect they would have without actually having to describe it. And it just kind of evolved over time through each season as I was writing more and more and kind of developing and kind of honing my kind of skills in podcast writing that I feel now, especially in this latest season, season 6, which I'm working on, it's become this whole different model of way more info in there about what the sound design is, what the emotions are for the characters, and really just letting them more act out the scene and get into the scene as opposed to describing as much of what is going on. It really kind of boils down to the fundamental writing rule, which is show, don't tell. Where you really want the characters and the story to kind of reveal what's happening instead of actually just describing everything that's happening. So Dwayne, when you came into working on manifestations, I mean, I think you came kind of a similar way too with your writing. I mean, it was kind of your first start into writing, but it was, again, a narrative fiction kind of story writing angle and not the screenwriting. So were you able to pick up any of this? Does anything ring any bells with you?
No, actually it does. So the first story that I wrote, which turns into episode 4 of Manifestations, when my character goes to Centralia, that was written first. And I was doing a lot of the exposition type writing where the characters just saying what they see and hear what's going on around them. And that progressed. I was doing a lot of that until I got to adding another character when another character had lines, I'm like,
Right.
oh yeah, that's not going to work. So it was a very natural change. And once I started actually rewriting a scene where
Right.
it wasn't just the character, my main character, going through what they were doing, but interacting now, and I was adding another voice. I just put in, okay, here's the other voice, and what do I want it to say? And then I don't know if it was instinctively or I knew someone else was going to be reading it. I wasn't going to be reading it. So I just gave them very small in the middle of the sentence. Like I just put it in parentheses and I explained to them when I gave it to them, this is just a direction of how I want you to read the line, and it's no secret, no spoiler. It was Quilla, the AI.
What?
So it's a computer. But it's not a strict emotionless computer. So I wanted Quilla to have some emotion, some feeling, like a little bit of a dry sense of humor, but not overly. I didn't want it to feel overly human. I still wanted it to feel like a computer.
I'm trying to remember. Didn't we also? Because I remember us originally talking about this. Didn't you also try looking for like online computer voices to use for the character before you actually cast a person?
No, that's something I'm actually using in season 2.
Okay, so that's what it was. Okay, I'm confused. That's all. Okay,
no, that's okay. So that's good lead in. So when I started writing season 2, and season 2 is a big change. So I'm adding in a lot of new characters, one major new character, and then some bits and pieces characters, and a very little of me actually reading Alan from Manifestation. So I needed to do more of that. So the very first script that I sent out to the person who's reading, and I already released that it's Karen Heimdahl reading, I got some feedback, and putting in those parentheses and here's the direction of how you read it was for an actual voice actor hard to see them and read the sentence or the paragraph and make it flow. So I'm like, all right, so I need to give them the direction, but I need to make it not interrupt the actual
flow, the acting
flow. So that's where I basically built my own new design of a script, so that it's got 2 columns.
Which I might be totally stealing.
That's fine. That's fine. But I basically broke it up into the page, the left quarter is where I put all of my direction, and the body is in the main 3 quarters of the page. And when it's not a person, when it's a sound design or a music cue, I put that in the body. That doesn't need to go in with the audio or the voice direction. But and
you can just use some color coding too, right?
Yes, like all of the sound design, I put the word SFX for sound effects, and then whatever the sound effect is, and I made that purple. All of the dialogue is black. Some of the music is it's got a shaded background orange so that it stands out.
And what's the significance of those colors? What do they mean to you?
I wanted, honestly, they do have a meaning.
Good.
I wanted them to stand out. So I didn't want to like the direction is in blue and it's in a shaded box off to the left so that it stands out and kind of blends into the background as you're reading down the column of with the actual dialogue. And then I wanted the sound effects to stand out as something I can ignore. As someone's going down and reading, they're like, that's a sound I can ignore. And then they get to a block where there's music. Again, it's something very does orange mean something? No, I just picked colors that weren't going to blend in. I didn't want to pick an orange and a red, let's say. Right. So I picked orange. I have a light yellow where I put in like you would see on a standard screenwriter's script where I have like interior house, whatever, just so I can set that for myself or whoever is doing the sound design.
That makes sense, because if it was something that, I feel like if I saw bright red in any way, it'd be more alarming and grabbing your attention as you're trying to read through it. So that's why it's kind of good you pick less, standout-ish
Yeah,
colors, but still they make it different.
Exactly. And as far as actually putting enough words in a sentence or in a paragraph so that it's worthwhile reading, and editing back so that it's not a half a page for a voice actor to read. That's another thing I've just learned. So, and it goes to the actual sound or I guess it would be sound design or editing. When you take the different actors to try to put them together into a scene, you don't want a huge block of audio from one person that they've maybe read 3 times, and you need to pick the best one. So I'm like, all right, give them a sentence or two and then another paragraph so they can read a sentence or two 3 times in a row, go down to the next sentence or two, 3 times in a row. Yeah. And that was just, and it mainly was something I noticed as I was reading my own lines for season 2. I'm like, why did I make this so long? I can't get through it without taking 3 or 4 breaths. So I'm like, all right, so time to edit that going forward.
I have definitely run into that problem with Dave as well, and Steve. Yep. You're like, wow, okay, got to change a few words here. Too much talking and no breathing. Talking with, I mean, it's very good to hear this from you, and really good input. I feel too that you've kind of developed really fast, a long way, and I'm definitely going to take some notes from this and learn from it. I feel, again, when you were talking about different drafts, I do feel usually for a start of a season, the first few episodes will have 2 to 3 drafts, and then I'll kind of get into the flow of the season, and then from then on it'll be 1 or 2 drafts for each, at least 2 drafts for each episode. But it's definitely, as I go through that next draft or 2, that's when I start cutting that stuff out, editing it in a way so there's more script friendly for the voice actor, and then more fits better for the show and the podcast, and in this more audio fiction style format. So what did Karen say? Did she like the new format, by the way?
Yeah, I asked everyone that I gave it to, because I like I said, I have a bunch of people coming in to read some small roles, and I wanted feedback. How was it working with me? Number one, how was it using the script? What did you like? What didn't you like? And I think it was her that she said that it was great. It gave her all of the information she needed, and she didn't really have, because I told her, like, come to me with any questions. I said, if you see something that I'm asking your character to say, and it's a tongue twister, I may not in my mind think it's going to be hard to say, but as you're saying it, let me know. Rewrites are fine. But there was only one thing that she stumbled over, and I forget what she called them. I think she called them trolls. And I thought maybe a very Swedish thing. I'm not sure. But it wasn't anything I had written. It was just the way it was flowing. She just kept stumbling over a word.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And she said there were trolls in the script.
That's awesome. It's funny. Swedish expression or something. Yeah. Yeah. Little like hurdles or speed bumps or pitfalls. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I realize now too, I meant to, because you gave me a sample page of this awesome looking script format, which I totally meant to attach for our Pod Manifest Behind the Manifestations podcast series, but I totally forgot to do that. So I will be sure to attach that page for this recording when we release it of Behind the Ostium, and then people can get to see what this wonderful format looks like. Maybe we should make a little video of this, or how you put it all together too, and you can release it to any would-be podcasters to use, because it sounds very helpful and kind of cuts out a ton of work that you have to kind of go through to get to this point, if you have it already.
I think that I would be happy to do that, but I just think it's very me. I will say that it makes sense to me. I wouldn't want to force anyone else to try to use.
Well, it could just be an example. Or would you rather, trademark it and sell it? We could do that, I guess.
That'd be great. But no, it's I stole a lot of it, so I didn't really. No, I it's very simple to Google what a screenplay should look like, and I'm like, all right, so this makes sense. All right, so because that always throws me why things are indented on screenplays, and the formatting. Because it just seems very wasteful, the pages. But and then once I read why, where a page should be about a minute of screen time. So I'm like, all right, makes sense. It just seems very wasteful.
It's because they just want to waste more paper, so the script looks thicker. They're jealous. They're jealous of regular writers that write big books. You see, and that's why.
Got to have something hefty to sign and sell on eBay.
Yeah, when you sneak it out of the filming room. Yeah. But I think that about does it for our little script format episode. Hope this was informative to you. It was definitely informative to me, and I hope you got something out of it. And stay tuned. We'll be continuing our Behind the Ostium series now with season 4 of Ostium coming shortly.